United Nations, Chapter 4. In this chapter, we are to cover the objectives and principles of the United Nations and the composition and functions of its three main organs, the General Assembly, Security Council, and International Court of Justice. UN or UNO, that is United Nations Organization, formally was established on the 24th of October 1945. That was after the Second World War came to an end. Now the reasons for the formation of United Nations goes as the disastrous world wars, failure of League of Nations, fear of the Third World War, and destructive weapons. Now before I go to the reasons, let me just take you back a little. After the end of First World War, you see, World War, that means the entire world was engulfed into wars. There was too much of destruction in the sense of losing lives, in the sense of assets, destruction of assets, and too many other things. Economically also, countries were now slowed down. Socially and economically, countries were affected. So immediately after the First World War, there was something that had been established that was called League of Nations. This League of Nations had come up with an objective to settle down disputes among the nations and to prevent such future wars. This League of Nations, no doubt, was established but could not succeed in its fulfillment of its objectives. So therefore, there was a Second World War. Now the Second World War was more disastrous, and hence there was a need now arising for the establishment of such an organization which would be resulting more powerful than the League of Nations. So after bitter experience of both the world wars, within a span of around 25 years, the leaders necessitated for establishment of this organization, and many conferences were held in order to discuss the nature and viability of such an organization. Finally, the leaders on 24th of October 1945 in the San Francisco conference came up with the formation of UNO. So disastrous world wars, as I said, millions of lives were sacrificed, and people became disabled, homeless, and unemployed. So there was a realization among the leaders that there should not be another war, and in order to prevent such wars, there has to be a formal organization which would be on the international basis to maintain peace in the world. Then, as I said, failure of League of Nations, which was sometime around 1920 to 1939, was born after the First World War. It had promised that it would be preventing such future wars, but it failed in its promise, and therefore also leaders took it as a need of the hour for the formation of some such international organization. Thirdly, since two world wars were already within a span of 25 years, as I said, were already done, there was a fear for the next world war or the Third World War. So the peace treaties signed after First World War had already sown the seeds of bitterness, and all the countries had now feared that the Second World War now could be the cause for another Third World War, and this further would lead to end of the world. And in these world wars, in the Second World War especially, the usage of atom bombs, destructive weapons like atom bombs, which were invented and used, was very disastrous. So using of these weapons became an armament race, and therefore immediately countries started inventing more of these sorts of weapons. So all the countries of the world felt that they should set up an organization where they could meet and discuss methods by which they could save themselves and mankind from destruction. Therefore, this United Nations organization was formed. Now, who was behind the formation? So here comes a picture. The three men sitting on a bench starting from Winston Churchill to Roosevelt to Stalin, were the ones who were behind the formation of the UNO. So they realized the dangers of war to humanity, so they held discussions, and with their sincere efforts, result of establishment of UNO occurred. Now, what was this UNO all about? We have already discussed. We need to know its flag. See, next picture will show you the UN flag. So this flag comes with an UN emblem. This emblem shows something related to peace. It's a sign of peace, and there is a symbol of peace, the statue. The second picture shows a man with a hammer is wanting to hit a weapon hardly, to struck the weapon hard, and the weapon, you can see, has got a bend towards the end. That is, the weapon is being changed after hitting with the hammer, is being changed to a plow. So plow that is used for agriculture purposes and is a symbol of peace and developing the nation with the help of agriculture and all that. So it means that with the hammer, when the arm or the weapon is struck hard, it is to be changed to plow. So this was recognized as symbol of peace and was gifted to UN by Russia. So what were the objectives or aims behind the establishment of such an international organization? No doubt it goes as a very immediate objective to maintain international peace and security. Secondly, it had to develop relations, good relations among the nations. That is, they wanted to have nations sit and have mutual understandings and settle down the disputes rather than having thought of war. Thirdly, it had to achieve international cooperation. That is, there should be cooperation among the nations. Nations should be in such a state where in case of any sort of misconception, it can be sorted out with proper cooperation among themselves. UN was a center for harmonizing the actions of the nations, and it had to promote and encourage respect for human rights and for its fundamental freedom. So this became the objectives of the UN. Besides these objectives, there were 3 new objectives. That was including disarmament, decolonization and development. Now what is disarmament? Disarmament means to give up weapons. Now in the previous slide, when I said about the reasons, I told you about an armament race that was coming up. So with the destructive weapons being invented more and more, all the nations, there were too many nations which were into a race, which was known to be armament race. So armament race means they were all trying to invent more of destructive weapons and use them. Now disarmament became an objective where it wanted the nations, UN wanted the nations to give up with the weapons. So that is what disarmament. Decolonization was free from colonial status. So no colonial status would be there. The nations need to be free from some colonial status, and further it was to look into the development of the nations. To achieve these objectives, there was a need of some principles to be followed in the organization. What were these principles? They were: the members have sovereign equality. Sovereign equality, that is self-rule equality. They must abide by the charter. Charter is something where all the rules and regulations are mentioned, and that has to be abided by all the members. They need to settle international disputes by peaceful means rather than any sort of weapon. Members should abstain. Abstain, that is choose not to have. Okay, they should abstain from threatening. They should not have this threatening or using forces against any member state. Members should assist the United Nations in any action that it takes, that is to give cooperation, and United Nations should not interfere in any of the internal affairs of the member state. Now, member state, what is all this? Member and member state are those who become a member of the organization. Now, who became the member of organization? So, the membership of the United Nations goes as all the nations who were willing to have peace ahead, who wanted. So, which nation do you think will not be wanting to have peace? So, nations who were all peace loving, they accepted the charter, they accepted the principles of the UN, and they agreed and abided with the same and became the members of the United Nations organization. This United Nations organization, now, in order to carry over with its principles and the objectives, had to have some organs. Like, all in all, solely it cannot have a control over the entire world. So, there were 6 different organs which were majorly formed for the functioning of the entire organization, out of which, according to your syllabus, we will be in detail studying about 3 main organs. Anyways, 6 organs go like the General Assembly, Security Council, the International Court of Justice, Economic and Social Council, Trusteeship Council, and the Secretariat. And we are going to in detail learn about the composition and functions of the first 3 organs. General Assembly. So, this is the picture, this is how it looks, the General Assembly. The composition of this General Assembly is all about, like, it is a main organ. First of all the members of the United Nations form the members of this assembly, and here from each state 5 representatives are taken, but when it is time to vote for something, then the vote does not go as 5, vote is combined to 1. That means the vote will come as 1 vote of this from the state, whereas from one state there would be 5 different representatives. The regular sessions of these general assemblies begin on 3rd Tuesday of September. So, every year on the in the month of September, the 3rd Tuesday is the day when the session of General Assembly begins, and this continues till the 3rd week of December every year. At the beginning of each session, Assembly elects its new president. Right in the beginning, a new president is elected every year. General Assembly takes decisions on important matters, and decisions are made by a 2/3 majority. So, matters like important matters means like electing a non-permanent member of Security Council, admission of new members, suspension of members, budgetary issues, etc. So, these are the few important matters which General Assembly looks after and takes care of it by a 2/3 majority. What are the functions of General Assembly? Apart from what we discussed as important matters, what are the other functions of General Assembly? So, General Assembly needs to receive and consider reports. It needs to consider, first of all, receive the reports and then consider them. And reports from where? Reports from Security Council and other organs. So, being the main organ, it needs to receive reports from the other organs, and then it goes on considering it. It also considers and approves the budget of the organization. So, when it is an international organization, it has got too many variety of activities to be done, and therefore there is a budget to be maintained. So, this budget is always considered and approved by General Assembly. It discusses matters relating to international peace and security. It makes recommendations for the peaceful settlement of disputes, and it elects non-permanent members of the Economic and Social Council, Trusteeship Council, and the judges of the International Court of Justice. It appoints the UN Secretary General also on the recommendation of the Security Council. Now here throughout the slide I kept on saying about non-permanent members. Now who are these non-permanent members might be a question in your minds. Just hold on for a few minutes as we go to the next slide for the next organ. You'll get to know who are those non-permanent members. This is what the composition and the functions of the General Assembly. Next organ, important organ, is known to be the Security Council. So Security Council, as you can see in the picture, it shows that this council is a working council, working in the sense it's an executive organ of the United Nations organizations. That means its primary responsibility is to maintain international peace and security, and this council is what comprises of 15 members. So here I come to the non-permanent members. Out of these 15 members, 5 members are permanent. 5 members, they remain permanent, and 10 are non-permanent members. Now who are these permanent members? These 5 permanent members are China, United Kingdom, United States of America, France, and Russia. So when I say member, it doesn't mean an individual. Here, since it's an international organization, here the members are the different nations. So the 5 permanent members are China, UK, USA, France, and Russia. And there are non-permanent members, which include 5 nations from Afro-Asian countries, 2 from Latin American countries, 2 from West European countries and other countries, and 1 from East European country. So this is how the entire 15 member of the council, that is Security Council comprising of 15 members, is divided into permanent and non-permanent. There are 5 permanent members and there are 10 non-permanent members. Each member here has got 1 vote. That means from China, irrespective of their representatives, it comes as 1 vote from China, 1 vote from France, 1 from Russia, and so on. Now, these non-permanent members are elected by the General Assembly. So now you get to know General Assembly's function, which says about to elect the non-permanent members. So these 5 remain permanent. The rest of the 10 are elected by the General Assembly for a term of 2 years. These members are elected for a term of 2 years. This meets whenever need arises, and decisions are taken by a majority vote of 9 members, including the 5 permanent members. Once again, 9 members. 15 are the total number of members. When there is a need and decision is taken by a majority vote, then it comes to majority vote of 9 members. So out of 15, 9 members vote is to be considered, and among these 9 members, 5 permanent members are compulsorily to be present. So the rest 4 come from the non-permanent members. These permanent members have a negative vote called veto. These 5 permanent members, they stand very important, and they have been given a negative vote, which is called veto. When the permanent members use their veto power, what happens? What is this veto? What is this veto? Why is it so powerful? When it is used by them, the council becomes powerless or ineffective. So how is it? How can the council go powerless? This means that if any of the permanent members votes against any resolution, even if all the other members agree to it, this resolution cannot be adopted. So it goes powerless. So if one veto comes in, that means the resolution cannot be passed. It cannot be adopted. So this makes the council go ineffective or powerless. So this is Security Council, an executive body, and its composition with 15 members. Now Moving on to the functions of the Security Council, no doubt the very important function remains the same for all the organs here, that is to maintain international peace and security. Here, Council abides itself by the principles of the United Nations. To recommend peaceful ways of settling disputes, to take military action against an aggressor. Who is an aggressor? Aggressor, somebody who is a nation who is full of aggression and is not willing to settle the disputes with mutual understanding and is forcing to go for other means of settlement. Now, to recommend admission of new members. So, Security Council recommends like these members can be admitted. To whom will they recommend? They will recommend to General Assembly, because General Assembly is the one who elects non-permanent members of the Economic and Social Council and the Trusteeship Council. So, Security Council takes into consideration the members and then recommends about their admission. So, new members who are to be admitted, their recommendation is put up by Security Council. Apart from the new members, it also recommends the appointment of the Secretary General and to elect the judges of the International Court of Justice. International Court of Justice, again the third important organ that will be followed now. So, these go as the functions of the Security Council. Now, the International Court of Justice, like we have court, high court and supreme court and all, this stands as a court of justice on an international ground for UNO. So, in the picture you can see the inner view as well as the outer view of the International Court of Justice. So, this being the judicial organ of the United Nations is called the International Court of Justice, and its headquarters are at The Hague in Netherlands. This International Court of Justice also consists of 15 judges. Again 15 judges elected for a 9-year term. Each of them is elected for a 9-year term, and who elects them? They are elected by the General Assembly and the Security Council. So, the last function of Security Council, where it states to elect the judges, and here even as General Assembly, there we also had undergone this one of its function, that the judges of the International Court of Justice are to be elected by General Assembly. So, these judges are elected by General Assembly and the Security Council. Out of 15, 5 judges, they retire every 3 years. Every 3 years, 5 judges retire. No 2 judges can be from the same country. That means from one country there cannot be 2 judges. So, every country will be representing only 1 judge to the UNO. The ICJ elects its president and vice president for a 3-year term. Both president as well as vice president are elected for a 3-year term, and 15 judges for 9-year term, and every 3 years there are near about 5 judges who take retirement. The ICJ has got again some functions. It resolves disputes concerning border and territorial issues. It settles the disputes brought to it by any member nation. Member nation, again any nation. So, all the nations here stand as members. So, any member nation, if they bring any disputes, so that is to be settled down. To give legal advice to the other organs of the UN on request. So, among the 6 organs, this remaining one, rest of the 5 organs, if they seek for any legal advice, then ICJ or International Court of Justice is ready to help them out. It's ready to give them this advice. These are the functions of International Court of Justice and the composition of these 3 main organs of the United Nations organization as per your syllabus. Thank you.